Evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is the second instalment of the Premier EMBA event that's taking place in London. So thank you for joining. It's great to see so many faces, new faces, some I've seen before, which is fantastic. We've got a great topic today talking about maintaining work-life balance during an EMBA and managing the personal and professional impact of executive education. So if I can begin with yourself, if you can just start with your background, what your MBA looked like, and why you then decided to go for an EMBA.
Okay. I graduated from university, got onto a consulting grad scheme at Deloitte. Didn't really know what that meant, and then I've basically stayed in professional services ever since. So was there for a few years, went to a boutique. I'm now at a sort of medium-sized firm, the Goldilocks one in the middle. I had always, as a sort of being a consulting type, I enjoy strategic problems, and I'd always fancied the idea of doing an MBA. So I had a slightly different path there, and I got a scholarship through a Financial Times essay competition. So I just happened to enter, did all right, and got the place. So that was how it happened for me.
Excellent. And if we can just move on down the panel, if that's okay.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. So I did a law degree, did a master's, did the LPC, and then did the New York bar exam, and then decided I didn't want to be a lawyer, much to my parents' annoyance. And then I kind of fell into financial services, and yeah, much like you've been there, ever since. And then just thought, I just want to go back to school because I had so much studying beforehand, and just wanted to do something. And the executive MBA just really spoke to me, and just thought it would help me think about what I did want to do going forward. And so yeah, I looked at a number of schools, and then settled on Warwick because it was just a great fit for me. So
Touch upon that in a moment. If we can just keep moving on down quickly, if you can just introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Nick. I'm in banking. I studied actually studied philosophy as an undergraduate degree, and I'd always kind of wanted to do an MBA, but then life and career just moved on, and I sort of found myself in the bracket of being EMBA age. And that was sort of the motivation for doing an EMBA. I started mine just after COVID, and one of the main reasons was I found COVID shrunk my network quite dramatically, and I wanted to sort of explode that. I guess we'll touch on that in due course, but that was one of the main motivations.
Excellent. And Dan, I hope it's Dan.
It is.
It is
Dan.
Yeah.
So my background is primarily advertising and marketing. I spent most of my career at different marketing agencies. I actually did my undergrad part-time in the evenings for about 4 years. And I really loved that aspect of being able to kind of take a problem that I'd experienced in the workplace that week, be able to think about it from an educational point of view, and then go back into the workplace over the next couple of days and kind of apply what I had learned. So whilst I was doing that, I just really felt that the next stage for me was to do an MBA. And when I moved over here to the UK about 4 years ago, I began that journey.
Excellent. So what we want to talk about is balancing the EMBA along with your personal lifestyle. Now, we've had discussions off camera before you guys arrived about various different circumstances, and some of you here today might have young families and are considering perhaps moving forward with an EMBA and think, is it for me? If I can start down this end first, then we'll make our way back to the top again. What are the circumstances around yourself, and what made you go into an MBA off those circumstances? Because it's quite a funny story.
Yeah, well, so my daughter was 8 months old when I started my EMBA. I hadn't yet actually gone back to work either. So it was quite daunting. So I'm thinking, I'm going back to work. I was going back to a promotion as well, so it's kind of a bigger job. MBA, child, like all these things I hadn't done before. So it was quite daunting. So yeah, those are my circumstances. I guess I say unusual, but actually I bet like there are more people in that space than you think.
Did you find it hindered your education, or did you find actually it allowed you to just get on with things?
I found it made me very focused and very efficient and kind of quite ruthless with the time that I had. So actually, I remember reading some of the literature before I started, which said, you should do 20 hours of reading a week. I was like, right.
Yeah.
So, you learn quickly how much you need to do, what you should do, how to get through. I think you become maybe quite ruthless about that. But I found it worked, and you prioritize. So it's totally doable. I don't think you need to do 20 hours. Don't ever tell my tutors.
It's always the way, isn't it? Rebecca, if I can move on to you.
Yeah, so my husband and I actually did our MBA together at the same time, both at Warwick Business School, but in different cohorts. And we were both planning to start in the March of the year after we had applied. And then I found out I was pregnant. And then so we said, okay, we have to speed it up. And so we went on the September before. So then we were studying, I was pregnant, and then had the baby, and then did the MBA as well with the baby. And he was doing it as well, the MBA as well. And he was working, and then I went back to work as well. So it was all, a mix of everything. Very much like Alison said, you have to prioritize. Like, I took the morning shift to study and then looked after the baby, and then he would look after the baby in the morning and then do his MBA in the evening. And we were during COVID as well, so there was a period of time where we couldn't have any help because people couldn't come to the house, so that was really tough. But then as soon as bubbles started opening up and stuff, then it was like the grandmas came in to help us, and and just if you do have that support network and you do have a family, use it unashamedly. Just ask whoever you trust to look after your baby, to look after them or your children whilst you get that done.
We'll go into more detail shortly, but how flexible were the university in allowing you to, given the circumstance of both of you really, to go on and study that course?
So for me, very flexible, and even so stuff like I didn't want to be traveling in my third trimester. So for the international module, they let me do it earlier than I should have done, which was good for me because then everything shut down because of COVID. So the rest of my cohort didn't get to do it. Only myself and my husband got to go and travel internationally. So that was good. But they were very flexible, and if I had any points or anything went wrong, anything that like I was had to miss a session or whatever, they were quite they were very understanding. I actually asked my cohort today for like what questions they wish they had known or asked, and one of them said, I wish I had asked how flexible they were with like assignment deadlines, because just thinking about how practically, you always think about how it's going to fit in with work, but you don't think about how it's going to fit in with your family and like other things that you have going on in your life.
Spot on. Nick, just go back to the original question of circumstances that allowed you to move forward with the EMBA.
I don't know how to build on the two ladies to my right, so kudos to you both, because I've just had a baby and have finished my MBAs, thankfully. So I didn't have small children. I actually was single, but got married through the process of the MBA. So there was a little bit of getting to know my now wife during the process, because we got, I'm going to go personal for a second. We got together in the COVID lockdowns, which meant like relationship just escalated quite quickly, and now we have a baby. So that element of it was interesting. I think making sure your partner is supportive. If your partner's doing an MBA, obviously they are going to be supportive. Because, and then to Alison's point, you're forced to get incredibly good at being ruthless with your time and being scheduled and scheduling, and that was an experience that I didn't appreciate how good I would get at that. And then final thought is actually, so I'm in trading in investment banking, which pre-COVID was 5 days in the office, no flexibility for culture and regulatory reasons. Thankfully, COVID has softened that a bit, so the ability to have to remote work became very useful. So during the MBA days, if I did need to do some work from Oxford where I was, that was way easier than if I'd had to get back into London. So that's a feature that I'm sure most of you have, and if you have it, make the most of it.
Dan, want to see yourself?
Yeah, there's a funny progressive timeline here because I'm due my first kid in about 3 months.
Oh, nice.
So we also have that journey as well at different times. Look, I think so. I moved to the UK about 4 years ago, and I come from Ireland, where there's a handful of different MBA programs, not many EMBA programs. So when I moved here, it was a job where there was just too much, I suppose, kind of opportunity cost, and if I was to go full time or if I was to do an EMBA. So ultimately for me, the executive program was the best suited opportunity there. And then I suppose I began that journey and kind of thinking, what was the best MBA program for me that was of that kind of part-time format. Thankfully, I had a very supportive employer at the time. It was maybe a 120 person startup. So they were really supportive in me going off and every kind of 5-6 weeks taking a week off work to do my studies. But I suppose that kind of changed then when we got acquired probably about halfway into my MBA program, and conversations became a little bit tougher from a work balance.
Excellent. One of the next questions, make your way inside this chair somewhere. One of the other questions we'd have is, how did you specifically choose your program and course? Because quite often with EMBAs, it's not about, location, it's more about the course and the program that you're studying. What were you looking for? What were the intricacies that made you go, perhaps, I want to go to Henley, I want to go to Warwick, or wherever it might be, if I could start down here?
Sure. Well, so I entered this competition, got a scholarship, so it was kind of, I wasn't sort of hunting around. It was opportunistic, but reasons why Henley is great. Beautiful campus outside of London. It's by the river. There are always, like swans, and it's a nice place for kind of reflection. And oddly enough, actually, we were saying just before we started about time for yourself. Bizarrely, like time away from work, time away from your small demanding children, to actually, do something for you, which I really enjoyed. But Henley's got a real focus on applicability to your current work. So I felt like every assignment actually helped me think about my business, issues I was facing, helped me think through them, come up with, sometimes new solutions to issues. So I think if you're looking for something really kind of practical and you want to get away, Henley's great.
Rebecca, if I can move on to you, because without wanting to sound rude here, it probably sounds a bit more chaotic down this end in terms of choosing. So Rebecca, when you were choosing your EMBA, what was important to you? Was it location? Was it the fact you were moving perhaps careers?
Yeah, so location did actually come into it because, I was going to have a small child. I needed to reduce travel time as much as possible. London Bridge is on my way home from work, so it worked, the Shard campus. That was something. Ranking obviously is very important because you're going to put it on your CV. You want it to be a prestigious institution. And also for me, I having studied so much, I know the way that I learn, and I know the way that I do well when being a test. So exams versus essays, I did think about that, and I did think about what would I do best in, and that was one of the things. And then how active the alumni network was, and how much support the careers department gave you. So I went to a lot of events like this and spoke to a lot of representatives from different universities to try and get a feel of that. And also, they put me in touch with some people via LinkedIn who had done the course, asked them all the questions that I'm sure you guys have, and you can ask us today, to try and get trying to get those answers. And had a spreadsheet, figured it all out. And the final factor, I think, which is another practical one, is I didn't get any financial support from work. So it was what scholarships are available, and what could I potentially get as well. And that was a big consideration because it is expensive. It is a big investment. So
it's a great point. We'll touch upon that in a bit. Nick, one of the questions, and I know a lot of people are keen to hear, what were some of the doubts that you had when you were looking at an EMBA? Were you ever in doubt? Was it always going to be the EMBA for you, or was it a case of the circumstances, right time, right place, and that's why you decided to move forward? Obviously, you were based in Oxford, so Site Business School was a no-brainer for you.
I was based in London, but Oxford to London is quite easy to get back and forth. But I think so. The doubts I received were from peers at work. But banking, particularly the trading side of banking, doesn't traditionally have MBAs. It's more of a consultants have MBAs, and they sort of look down on it as you're just going to become a management consultant. So my peer group at work was skeptical about it. And I think then the other doubt is when you sum up the costs of time away, particularly if you're traveling, living costs, then it becomes a big number. And I went to a lot of these and I asked everybody, when have you got your return on investment? And the reality is you may never, and it certainly doesn't happen quickly. So they were the doubts that went through my mind. I think I'd already in my mind always, one, wanted to do an MBA because I did philosophy degree personally. Two, I didn't get into Oxford as an undergraduate, so I had this chip on my shoulder, and thankfully I got in as a mature student. So I kind of managed to overcome those doubts. But like the peer group that sort of discourage you and the cost is something to be prepared for as you think about it.
Dan, do you want to elaborate further on that? Did you have any doubts?
Yeah.
You've already mentioned about only having numerous amount of courses available in Ireland. Was that a factor?
Yeah, I think like some of the reasons that I went to do the MBA to begin with were that I felt I had a real numerical gap when it came to kind of thinking about accounting or thinking about finance or thinking about investments that my firm might make. And so I definitely had a doubt that, when it came to doing statistics or when it came to doing economics and those types of classes, that I would have a bit of a struggle, maybe the subject matter, some of the formulas. But that was the whole reason that I went to do the MBA, to kind of round out my skill set, right, and improve myself. And I think to the point of the peers that you're doing your MBA with as well, they all come from such a diverse background. Then they have their own skill sets that they bring to the table. One of the people in my group was a money FX trader in banking, and so when I had problems with formulas, when I had problems with statistics, he was there to kind of help guide me through that. I think like one thing I would say about MBAs in general, nobody wants you to fail in that process, right? You have fantastic tutors, you have fantastic professors, you have fantastic support network from the students, but then also from the program staff as well. And they're all there to make sure that whatever you're struggling with at any step, they're guiding you through that, right? So there was definitely fears and definitely shortcomings I felt that I had going into the process, but I was able to navigate that as I went through the journey.
So Rebecca, if I can come to you at this
Yeah.
point, what difference has the EMBA made to you? On a
Yes.
career level and a personal level.
So we talk about return on investment. So when I applied and finished my MBA, I was working in the retail side of banking, and then the MBA and what I'd learned allowed me to apply and be successful in my application to the investment side of banking. And for whatever reason, there is a big difference in pay between those two. So and the fact that I had got a scholarship to do my MBA reduced the cost. So my return on investment was actually kind of met pretty quickly from that career shift. And also for me, I think a big thing that it allowed me to do was it opened up opportunities to present in a safe space. Like you said, no one wants you to fail. You do these group presentations, and it just gives you different ways of doing things, different ways to present to different groups and audiences. And that to me has opened up a lot of avenues that I didn't think would come to me. So actually Warwick asked me to do a guest lecture on corporate governance at one of their undergraduate degrees, and it's something that I've never ever crossed my mind to do, and really enjoyed it. And and then again that opened up more doors at work. So it's just kind of like a snowball effect of one thing leads to another, and it all started, I think, from the MBA.
Excellent. Alison, yourself?
Yeah, I think the MBA did two things for me. One was help me sort of transition from I guess, a management to a leadership role by having that broader perspective. And it also, I think, helped me in terms of, I was working at a sort of niche consulting firm, about 50, 60 people. I'm now at a kind of 3,000, I've moved into a fairly, in our world, like a fairly respected leadership consultancy firm. So I think the MBA was a key to sort of unlock that for me.
And there'll be many people like that in the same circumstances that you were in, perhaps. You'd recommend it? Were there other options available to you at the time?
Jobs.
Career opportunities in terms of, yes, you got the EMBA, but was there any other educational pathway you could have taken?
I mean, I think for me it was either that or just don't. I mean, to kind of some of the points you guys were making about money and timing and having the scholarship and the kind of forced opportunity was it made me make the time.
Yeah.
Find. But I do think it's helped in terms of that recognition. It's almost like a super credential when you go into the job market. And actually, I found that people approach you more now about positions rather than kind of going out to hunt for jobs yourself.
Excellent. Nick, coming over
Yeah,
to you on that.
just to add to Rebecca's point on the snowball effect, I think the network side of it is quite interesting. So I finished about 2 years ago, and the people that I bounce business ideas off is very, very different now to how it was pre-EMBA. And you look at your peer group post the EMBA and the things they're doing, it becomes quite inspiring that you've been around these people who've changed and transformed and are now setting up businesses or got now brand new global careers. There's something about that alumni group that you're surrounded with that elevates your thinking. So I'm working on a business idea that I probably might not have had the confidence to do without doing the EMBA. and that's a function of a series of different snowballs and networks and conversations. And then the networking thing is massive. So as you look at schools, bear that in mind. The ability to get in touch with somebody in a particular industry just because you've gone to the same school with them, even though you've never met them, is quite powerful. And there's generally, each school has an unwritten rule that if someone reaches out, you give them the time of day in a way that you just wouldn't get through any other network. That's a really interesting dynamic that you only feel sort of after you leave.
Dan, yourself?
Yeah, I think just building on Nick's point, I mean, your professional soundboard that you have around you just
Good way of
multiplies.
describing it. Yeah.
So if you do have a business idea, if you're facing, a challenge in the workplace, the amount of people that you can go and have those conversations with, the quality of that just vastly improves. Yeah, that's all I would say on that.
Yeah, look, we've got to touch upon finances because it's very expensive. There's no getting around it. If you do your undergrad, postgraduate, then you go on and do your exec masters, it's very expensive. Do you feel like perhaps we've touched upon it already? You will get a return on investment on that education at some point. Start with yourself now.
Yeah. So mine was all self-financed. I was able to work out with my workplace that part of my compensation would be sacrificed for them to be able to cover some of my tuition fees. But it was predominantly a kind of self-undertaking, I suppose. I faced a peculiar position halfway through the MBA and that I was made redundant. So definitely there were financial worries at that point in time. But I think the MBA and having been halfway through it at that point, it had given me a lot of self-confidence to be able to navigate that situation. There were career services and career advice available at the school that I was able to leverage to be able to set myself up for more conversations. And I've just accepted another offer for the last couple of weeks to move on again. And I think the place I'm now going on to has definitely recognised the value of that MBA. I think the super credential, as you were saying, definitely. So I feel very confident in the ROI and moving into the future. But I think I also took a real long-term horizon view on the ROI as well. I said, okay, I've probably got 30, 35 years of my career ahead of me. What does that cost look like now, factored in over 35 years? And I think when you break it down like that, it becomes a much more achievable investment to make.
Nick, do you want to elaborate further on that?
Yeah, no, agree totally with Dan's points. I think a longer term perspective is the best way to approach it. I was all self-financed as well, albeit managed to negotiate some unpaid, semi-paid holiday for some of the weeks, but that was a small sort of rounding error in the grand scheme of things. The thing I'd add is, as you think about where to go, be conscious of where you're going to work and the location or industry that you want to be in for the next 10 years. I know it's hard to decide that, but you will get the most out of your MBA if you're conscious. So if you want to travel abroad, say do it abroad. If you want to stay in the UK, do it in the UK, because the snowball effects of the network and the lessons are really good if you then make the most of it. A few people on my MBA have then sort of since moved to Asia, where Oxford don't have as big a presence. In hindsight, they're like, I probably should have done one in Singapore or something like that. That's sort of a trick to make the most out of the ROA over the long horizon.
Okay, Becca.
Yeah, so like I said, I was lucky to get a scholarship, and then it enabled me to switch kind of careers. So for me, yeah, I have seen that return on investment. So.
So now I think we touched on the scholarship part already for
Yes,
yourself.
but yeah, I've definitely seen, it's certainly helped me. I've seen a return on investment.
Absolutely. Let's touch upon the EMBA, go back to the programme and the courses itself, because we have got a wide range of universities. One of the things that strikes me is Warwick Business School. People will hear the word Warwick and just think smack bang in the middle of the country, but they have a London campus. What you find is there's a lot of universities that have London campuses that will make it easier if you are looking to study and live here. Is that right?
Yes, so yes, I did it at the Shard, and one of the highlights was seeing the fireworks night, display on from like the 17th floor or whatever it was. So that's great. But also even I would say within Warwick, so I did the evening cohort, and my husband did the weekend cohort, and we saw differences within those two cohorts. So one small one is the food was better on mine, and he was always complaining about the food. But for him, because he did it on the weekend, so people would be there on a Friday, and then on a Saturday as well. So whereas mine was Tuesday evening after work and Wednesday evening after work. So Tuesday evening after work, people do not want to go out after you've done work, and then 3 hours, and then it's like 10 o'clock by the time you finished. So there was not much networking on our cohort, if I'm honest. My husband's cohort, everyone went out for a drink on the Friday night afterwards, and whilst I was pregnant and not the baby hadn't come along yet, I was able to take advantage of his network. So I didn't lose out in that sense. But definitely think about the practicalities of which course you're going to do. If it is an after school sorry, my kids an after school club. It's an after work. If it is an after work cohort, then you may sacrifice some of that networking after your lectures.
Excellent. It's clearly catching, don't worry. Dan and Nick, if I can come to you quickly, in terms of, you've mentioned a few times now that you've attended these kind of events. What should the potential students that are in the room today, be looking to ask and be looking in particular at when they're sitting down one-to-one with whatever business school it might be they're at? If I could start with yourself, Nick.
That's a hard one.
It's a loaded question. So
Well, because every business school is going to give the big spiel. I think it's probably good to speak to alumni rather than just the business school reps. Nothing against business school reps, but I think you get a flavour for the business school from talking to the alumni, and more than just one. So as I was researching, I talked to a few from different business schools and I just got a good feeling about the Oxford element to it. I also looked at Stanford. I discounted it for one, the alumni were all very narrow in tech and venture capital, and then two, the cost of additionally flying out there was just astronomical. So I'd say, ask to speak to alumni. Ask to speak to alumni in your field as well. So someone who's a few years or plus having gone through it in your industry, if the business school reps can put you in touch with people like that's a really golden way to get some perspective. And then just a little bit to the earlier point on the course dynamics, make sure you get from the business school reps like the very specifics of the course dynamics. 1 week long programs versus evenings, as Rebecca said, are very different. And be kind of crisp on the pros and cons of that. That would be my advice.
And Dan, it's important to point out, you're not just going to find out tonight where you want to go. You might have to go to 3 or 4 of these before you find your perfect business school. How was it for you, and what questions did you ask at these kind of events?
Do you know what? I don't know if I had the confidence to ask too many questions at that point in time at these types of events. Definitely have kind of gained in confidence since doing the MBA. What I would say is, like, recognizing that it's a really tricky job market at the moment, there is that element of it being a super credential. But a question that I would absolutely ask to the different representatives from the schools is, what is the competitive advantage that your school is going to give me as an MBA graduate over other schools? And so for me, when I was considering the different programs and I looked at Chicago Boot, it was very tech, it was very finance. They were gaps that I had in my CV that I wanted to build out. There were other fantastic schools that I could have gone to that maybe if I wanted to work more in advertising into the future, in brand, luxury marketing, they were a better fit for that. So, consider, to Nick's point earlier, where do you want to be in 10 years' time, and what is the best school, best opportunity that helps you accelerate that journey? That would be my advice.
Excellent.